Yo, what's going on, everyone? My name is Benjamin Nowak, and this is the Smallmouth Experience. And in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about how fishing out of a kayak has actually made me a better angler. Some things that I can take back to fishing out of a bass boat that will help me be more successful on the water, ways that it's helped me adjust my perspective on the gear that I'm using, the way that I choose my tackle, as well as a couple of other things that fishing out of a kayak has taught me that I took for granted when I was fishing out of a bass boat. But before we dive into that, I want to talk to you guys about an opportunity I have to work with Angler Labs and Temple Fork Outfitters rods to give you a shot to win a TFO Tactical Elite Bass Rod like this one right here. All you have to do is go download the Angler app, create a profile, and sign up for the TFO with Benjamin Nowak Challenge. Catch 20 fish in 14 days, and you're going to be entered to win a TFO Bass Rod or 50% off a bass rod of your choice from TFO Rods. It's an awesome opportunity. All you have to do is sign up, go out and fish, and catch some bass. You're going to have a chance to win a TFO Tactical Elite Bass Rod. So one of the biggest things that I've learned, and this is not gear related like everything else, is that there are fish typically in every area of the lake. You just have to figure out exactly where they're located and how to catch them. I'm not saying that these are the biggest fish in the lake, but typically in an area, you can find a way to catch fish if you sit there and you figure out exactly where they're at and what they're doing. Out of a boat, you have so much more mobility, and as an angler, I am a run and gun type of guy. I like to run to a spot, check it, fish it for a little bit. If I don't get bit, I'm going to run to the next area. Well, I can't do that out of a kayak, so it's forced me to slow down. It's forced me to be really thoughtful and intentional on the areas of the lake that I'm going to and the spots that I'm fishing, and sit there and pick these areas apart the best that I can. And what that's allowed me to do is really maximize the number of fish that I'm catching out of a spot. Whereas in a boat, I might sit there and catch 1, 2, or 3 fish. I've been sitting there and catching 5, 10, or 15 fish out of the same area because I've been very intentional in paying attention to what is going on the body of water around me. I'm saying, okay, there's a point there should be some rock on it. I'm going to figure out the casting angle where these fish should be. And then when I catch one, I really focus on what's going on around me to make that same cast over and over again. It's helped me maximize my numbers, and this is something I'm going to take with me when I go back to a boat, slow down and pick apart an area, especially if I'm catching fish there. The other things it's taught me are very gear related. It's basically simplified my approach to fishing because out of a boat, you have the ability to overcomplicate everything from the electronics you're using to the rods, reels, line setups, to the baits you're throwing. You can change colors all the time. Whereas in a kayak, you can't do that. You don't have the ability to carry 20 rods. You can't carry every piece of tackle you own. So you have to be very intentional with what you're bringing and what you're choosing to have versatile setups and have versatile baits that you can fish in a variety of different water columns to go out and figure out ways to make these bass bite. So I want to start by talking about my rod, reel, and line setups because I really limit myself to 3 of these combos that I bring with me on a kayak. One of the biggest things you're going to notice about the rod selection that I choose is that they're all versatile setups. I can do multiple things with all of these rod and reel combos. So the first one I want to talk about is some sort of crankbait setup. And there's really 2 that I switch between depending on the type of body of water that I'm going to. The first is a 7-foot medium moderate rod. It's a TFO Tactical Elite 7-foot crankbait rod. What I like about this is I can throw jerk baits on it, square bills, small crankbaits, or even swim baits if I have to. It's just a really versatile setup. Then I pair it with a Lose Tournament Pro reel with 10-pound test fluorocarbon line and whatever bait they're going to be biting. Now this is a bait that came out of the Monster Bass box, but you can do so many different things with this setup, from fishing jerk baits to small square bills to crankbaits. Just a very versatile setup you can do a whole bunch of different things with. This is something I like to bring when I'm fishing shallow water, when I know I'm going to be fishing jerk baits or small crankbaits. But if I think I'm going to be fishing deeper or fishing around a little bit more grass, I'll switch up to a little bit longer setup. Depending on the style of body of water I'm fishing, is a 7'4" crankbait rod. It's a medium heavy, so it's a little bit heavier than that shorter rod, but I like this for lipless crankbaits, a little bit deeper diving crankbaits down to like 10 foot of water, or even chatterbaits. A lot of times when I'm fishing around grass, and I'll do this out of a boat as well, is fishing a slower rod with the chatterbait because it gives those fish time to load up on it before you set the hook. So with this longer rod, I can make longer casts, and that's a medium heavy, so if I'm fishing around grass, I can get those fish moving towards me a little bit easier than with this lighter 7-foot medium setup. So this is more of a grass fishing rod for me, moving baits like a lipless or like a chatterbait when I want to make really long casts and get that bait away from the boat. Moving into some sort of jig rod. This is something that I'll bring with me all the time, whether I'm fishing out of a boat or fishing out of a kayak, is a jig. A jig is insanely versatile. You can do so many different things with a jig, whether you're skipping it, swimming it, dragging it, but you need to have a rod that has the power to drive that hook home. It's a 756, it's a 7.5 heavy rod, and I like that long distance, especially out of a kayak and a heavy power, because especially out of a kayak, you need to set the hook hard to drive that hook home. You're fishing a jig with a relatively stout hook, and when you're catching those fish, the kayak's going to move towards them. So having a longer rod, a little bit heavier power is going to help drive that hook home when those fish eat it, especially on the end of a long cast where they're dragging it. So it's a TFO Tactical Elite 756 rod. I'm pairing it with a Team Lose Custom Pro bait casting reel, 17-pound test fluorocarbon line. This is a very versatile setup, but having something with a heavier line and a heavy 7-foot, 7.5-foot rod is really, really critical when you're fishing out of a kayak, because a lot of times a jig's just a great way to get a big bite, and having the right rod is going to allow you to be way more successful. And my final setup is some sort of finesse setup, and this is what you guys saw in my last video. It is a TFO Tactical Elite Bass rod, and this is actually a 7.1 prototype rod we're working on, but you want something that you can throw a variety of different finesse applications with. I have this rigged up with a little Ned rig, a 1/4 ounce Ned rig, but you want something that will handle basically from an 1/8 all the way to a 1/4 ounce really effectively. A finesse rig, what I've realized from a kayak, is one of my favorite things to be fishing with, because you can fish it really slowly and pick apart cover really, really easily. So having some sort of spinning rod in the boat is going to help you catch way, way more fish, especially out of a kayak when you've already burned through an area with a jig or with a crankbait or a jerkbait, because you can pick it apart really slowly with a finesse technique like a Ned rig or a drop shot or a shaky head. This is a TFO 7.1 medium light rod. It's a Team Lose Custom Pro 3,000 size reel with 15-pound test braid to 8-pound fluorocarbon leader. And I've caught a bunch of fish out of the kayak with this setup right here. So definitely bring some sort of spinning rod, some sort of rod that you can throw finesse applications on, because it will help you maximize your fishing time on the water when you're fishing out of a kayak. One of the other big things that fishing out of a kayak has taught me is that I can't bring a ton of tackle. So I basically downsized to one tackle box and a couple different varieties of soft plastic baits. So I want to share with you guys first the tackle box that I brought. And what I've done is taken a Flambeau 5007 size, 3700 size box, and really broken it down to some of my most confident applications, some baits that I have the most confidence in, but also versatile applications, so things that I can do a bunch of different techniques with. On this top row, I have myself some swim jigs. Swim jigs are super versatile. You can fish them in a variety of different water clarities. Whether you're fishing smallmouth or largemouth, and fish will bite them. What makes a swim jig so good is you can use it to imitate a variety of different things, whether it's a crawfish or a bluegill. You can have shad-colored swim jigs if you guys live down south where shad are a big deal. So a swim jig is really important. Basically anything from a 1/4 ounce to a 1/2 ounce swim jig, depending on how deep you want that bait to go. Next to the swim jig, I have some jigs. And I talked about jigs a little bit, but jigs are something that I almost always will have tied on. Having a jig will allow me to fish a variety of different depths, and basically pick apart an area really slowly with something that I know will get me a big bite. A jig is also a really good confidence bait for me, so it's something that I pack because if I just need to get a bite, if I know there are fish there, I can tie on a jig and go to work. I really keep it really simple. I bring a magic craw color, some sort of color for dirtier water, and then a crossed out color like this brown and gold tinsel right here. So keep your selection simple, the colors that you believe in. And this is something I'm going to take back to when I go in my boat. Like, I really have so much tackle in this boat, but I probably only use 10% of this. And that's what packing a single box like this has taught me. I've caught so many fish with just what's in this box right here. And when I think about the baits that I'm using when I'm fishing out of a boat, I can probably narrow it down to a pretty simple selection in there as well. So this next row is basically a shallow water row. And this is something I'm going to use in shallower water or when I fish are feeding up. And these are jerk baits. So jerk baits to me is a great technique for smallmouth and largemouth, especially when it's sunny out. Those fish are keying up in the water column. So I'm packing some jerk baits. This is a Duo Realis 100 SP. This is the bait that I caught a whole bunch of fish on in one of those recent videos that I posted, actually fishing out of a boat with Lily. Another 100 SP, just a clear water color like this, super translucent, green back, and then a little bit of white on the belly. And then a Megabass knockoff. All shallow water jerkbaits. A Megabass knockoff, and then another Duo 120 SP. It's a little bit bigger body bait. So jerkbaits are something that you can cover a lot of water with quickly. It's a great bait for the springtime to get fish to come up in the water column. So in this next section here, I have small body crankbaits, square bills, or down to like 5 foot, 7 foot diving crankbaits. And they're pretty much all in a red color. They're all in these bright colors for tannic style bodies of water. And the reason for that is a lot of times this is the color that I'm going to be throwing on natural style lakes or more tannic off-colored rivers that I fish around here. Red is just a really good color, and in the springtime it's something I have a ton of confidence in. So I packed all red baits for my crankbaits because they flat out get bit, and the flat side in the spring just catches a bunch of fish. So I'm not typically going to be fishing very deep out of a kayak, so these are all basically 7 foot diving or less. Working our way down in this box, we talked about jigs, talked about mid or upper column baits like jerk baits and crankbaits. This next row here is basically my grass fishing baits. So what I'm doing is I'm carrying some vibrating jigs like the Strike King Thunder Cricket or your Z-Man chatterbaits because they're such a versatile bait. You can fish around clear water with whites or muted natural colors, or you can fish around dirty water, and that blade's going to help those fish key in on it, and it just gets a lot of bites. When I'm fishing out of a boat, it's something I always have tied on, so carrying it in the kayak is something that's important for me because it's a bait that I have a lot of confidence in. This next section here is for my lipless crankbaits. And lipless crankbaits, you guys have heard me talk about them a lot, are ultra versatile. Largemouth, smallmouth, anywhere you're fishing, there's an opportunity for you to fish a lipless crankbait. Whether you're dragging it along bottom or you're fishing it around grass, just straight retrieving and popping it out of the grass, you can fish a lipless crankbait a bunch of different ways. All of the baits that I'm bringing with me are super versatile, but a lipless crankbait might be the most versatile bait in this entire box. So I brought, again, basically all red colors. Red in the spring is my go-to. So I have that Bill Lewis Supernatural red color. I have a cotton cordell bait that I was given from my buddy Andy Meyer, a Strike King Red Eye Shad, a Jackal TM70, this little itty bitty dual Realis Vibe 62. This is a cool little bait. It's kind of a sneaky. But lipless crankbait you can do so many different things with, so it's a bait that I had to carry in this box with me. It's something I have a ton of confidence in the spring. So those are all of my baits. But for my terminal tackle, I'm carrying wobble heads, 3/4 ounce size, Ned rig heads, 1/4 ounce size, because that's the size that I have the most confidence in, and some sort of swim bait heads, like these Josh Douglas Goldeneye swim bait heads, in 1/4 and 3/8 of an ounce. And that is the one box that I'm bringing with me. Super versatile. All of these things I have confidence in, so I can tie it on and trust that I'm going to be able to go out and catch some fish. As we move into the actual soft plastics that I'm bringing, along those same lines, I'm going with things I have a ton of confidence in, with baits that I know I can catch fish on. So I brought myself some Ned rig baits for those Ned rigs, Z-Man TRD Ticklers and Z-Man TRD Hogs. Both of these are baits that I've caught a bunch of fish on in the past in colors that are tried, true, and proven. I brought some green pumpkin and the deal colored Ticklers, and I brought the TRD Hogs in the Drew's Craw color, which is one of my all-time favorite colors. So again, for my jigs and wobble heads, I keep it really simple. Things that I can put on the back of a chatterbait or things I can put on the back of a jig. I brought some Egg Zone lures, Muscleback Finesse Craws in black and blue, some Reaction Innovations, Spicy Beavers, and Green Pumpkin, because it's just a great all-around bait you can do so many things with. And then some Rage Tail Craws, both in black and blue, and in the Bama Bug and Green Pumpkin colors. Just really versatile baits that you can use on a variety of different techniques to go out and catch big fish. For those swim baits, I brought myself some Kayak Easy Shiners. In the spring, the Kayak Easy Shiner is the way to go, so that is what I packed. I also have my dye pen, the scale that you guys see me use all the time, and a pair of pliers and some scissors. And finally, a little bit extra line for that spinning setup should I need to replace my leader on that. So if you guys can tell from this video, kayak fishing has really taught me to downsize, taught me to simplify, taught me to go to things that I have confidence in, because with a very limited tackle selection, I'm still able to go out and be successful on the water. I think it's going to be something that I carry over to the boat. Again, is basically keep in mind that I can limit my selection, go out there, keep it really simple, fish through an area really slowly with baits that I believe in, and end up being very successful when I'm out there on the water. So I hope this gives you guys some insight on what I'm taking with me in the kayak. If you enjoyed it, please do me a huge favor, give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below if you're not already. Hit me up in the comment section if you have any questions or comments. But as always, thank you guys for watching. Take care, tight lines. God bless. Pursue your passion.